All right, we've got a lot to do tonight because this is Adobe Capture, the Swiss Army knife of mobile apps. We start with materials, and here you use your camera to take a look at just about anything. This happened to be a wooden cabinet. You snap a picture and it starts to create what they call materials, which is really just a bump map to go over 3D objects, and they give you these examples of a flat sheet and a sphere and a cylinder and even a shopping bag. So this is how you get materials. Once you've made one, you give it a name, and here we're going to call this one wood. Kind of obvious, but we call it wood. And we're putting it, as you can see, in the Capture Demo library. That's what happens to all of these things. They go into your CC library. So you click Saved, and this texture or material is... All right, now if we switch from the phone over to Adobe Dimension, which is a program of 3D models that you can use to create all sorts of AI, and we're just not going to get into that. Dimension is a whole nother lesson sometime down the road. But right now, we're going to take the text tool, and we're going to click out here, and it's going to create the standard fill text of lorem ipsum. We'll go down here, and we change that to web spinners. WEBSPINERS. All right. Then you can take that 3D model, and you can move it forward, backward, move it around. You can rotate it. You can do all sorts of things. What we're going to do basically is we're going to just raise it up a little bit because the bottom of the P is sticking down below the baseline. So we'll raise that up here. Now what we want to do is we want to add that wood texture that we just made. So if you go over here, you see you've got your basics, but if you click that little plus sign, you can open the CC libraries, and here's that wood texture that we made. Simply drag it over and drop it on that 3D model, and wait for it. It's coming. Here we go. Try it again. Grab it. There we go. And we've got the wood on the 3D letters from Dimension. And we can show you that it's actually 3D. You can go in here, and you can change the X, the Y, and the Z. You can spin it back and forth. You can see as it gets here, you can see it's actually 3D letters made out of wood, the wood that we captured with our phone, and and we can make it jump up and down, low rider web spinners, and we can do just about anything now that it's a 3D object that has what we're calling the material textures on it. And that's what you do with the materials that you collect from Adobe Capture. We can make it taller, we can make it thicker. You've got all sorts of control here. So we can make the extrusion deeper. Again, this is all in Dimension, and it's another Adobe product that we might want to look at down the road. But for now, let's just say we created this with our phone, this material, and we've added this material to a 3D object in Dimension. Okay. The next part of Adobe Capture is type. You find a typeface. This happens to be from a 1940s magazine ad for the Hoover vacuum cleaner. You select it with your camera. You let Adobe take that capture, run it over to Adobe fonts, and try and find something that matches. So you'll get several versions here of what they think it just might be. Some of them close, some of them not so close. But you can go up and down and say, no, not this one, not this one, maybe that one, maybe that one. No, the one that's the closest is this one, the Azo Sans Uber Regular, because it's got the little tiny holes in the center of the O's. So we're going to select that one. We're going to give it a name up here, call it Hoover for this type style. And then if we hit save, it's going to put us in our CC library. So over here in Photoshop, simply get the text tool, type something here, let's call it Houde Studio, if I could remember, there's the space bar, Studio, and then we take the move tool, bring it out here to the center somewhat. We can then select it, click that type style, and it's now using the type style from the 40s magazine article to write Houde Studio. So that works pretty well. Resize it as you will, and then you can click on the foreground and back and the foreground and the stroke colors. And here we'll make it a little fancy. We'll make it purple with a fuchsia outline. So that's from a 40s magazine into today's Photoshop. Moving on, the next thing is called shapes, and here's what we're going to look at. This is an old Brownie camera, and if you click on the black and white version there, you'll get a very high resolution image. Now you can use that slider down at the bottom to decide just how light or dark you want it. If you go somewhere here in the middle, that gives you a pretty good representation. Now this is a vector drawing, and that's my vector hand moving into the picture, so I could turn it just a little bit. But this is a vector drawing, so it is infinitely resizable. And right now we're going to say that's it. We freeze the frame. We click the arrow, the check mark at the bottom, and we get this image. Now we can refine this image by cropping, so we can get rid of some of that stuff that's in the background we don't want. So now we've got this image of the camera as a vector black and white image. We hit save. Let's call it Brownie, which is again pretty obvious, and we will hit save again. I'll call it Brownie Junior because that's the actual style, and we'll say save. There we go. So we're back to Photoshop. We can simply drag it from our library, drag that black and white image from the library over here and click, and boom, we now have that high-res image, vector image in Photoshop. We'll resize it here a little bit, and then we'll do some other things to move it down. There we go. And we'll do some other things that might be interesting. Here's the layers panel. If we'll click and we'll make another layer and we'll drop it behind the camera. All right, and then we will take the pen tool, and first let's change the color. Let's change it to maybe a turquoise of some sort, somewhere in here. Yeah, right here. And we'll say, okay, now the foreground color is this turquoise. If we take the pen tool and we start to trace around the outside of the camera. Now remember, we're working on the layer underneath, so we'll click around here, sort of quickly rough it out. Start here on this corner, go over to this corner, up to the front corner. It's basically just dragging out lines, connecting straight lines around the rectangular shape, and you can see it's starting to form a background to our black and white image. And boom. And let's say you didn't get it quite right. You can always go back with the individual select tool, find those corners, pull them to exactly where you want them to be. So now you've got a black and white version from an image you took with your phone, and you've then added a color behind it. We'll add another layer. We take that other layer and we drag it down to the bottom. It won't let me drag it to the bottom, so I'll just move the camera up one. So now we've got a blank layer in the background. Take that blank layer, let's give it a color, yellow gold somewhere in there. Say OK, and I had the camera selected, so now I've got a gold camera. I really don't want to do that. We're going to go back and we're going to change it back to our turquoise color for the camera. Somewhere over here. It's not important exactly where it was, but now we've got the turquoise camera and we've got the layer in the bottom selected. So that's something to notice. All right. So now we lock those other two layers so that we can't mess with them anymore. And we go in here and we find a color. We'll find that gold color-ish, and we'll go in here and we will make a rectangle there, almost square, and put that behind the camera. All right, and then instead of the rectangle, we click the gradient, and we put a slight gradient behind it so you can see that little glow around the camera. So we've created an illustration, just one way that you could use shapes. Another way is that somebody says, well, I need my logo in an ad, or I need my logo in a video, but all I have is this business card. So you do the same thing. You take the picture with your phone, you clean it up so that you get just the area that you want by cropping. Move that down, move this over, there we go, and we can move this in a bit. We don't need all this extra white area. So now we've got a vector image from their business card that we can use in various ways. We'll go over here and we will call this, let's call this security secure detailing, and we'll click save. We'll go to it goes into the capture demo file, and we're ready then to use it somewhere. You could, of course, use it in Illustrator as we did with the camera, but here we can also use it in Premiere. So I've got a stock image here, just a background, sort of a swirly background, and we can take our captured logo, basically drag it above the video background, and if we take a look at it, it just floats there in front of it. So we're starting to make maybe a intro title or something like that for a video for the secure detailing. We're going to go over here and we're going to first make take the logo and take it down to 0 at the beginning. In other words, shrink it down to nothing, and then this far along in the video, bring it up to this size so we sort of get this zoom effect. Again, there's a lot of things that we're going to have to go into some other time in how to work in Premiere, but this is just an idea of how you can use stuff you've captured with your camera off a business card and turn it into a video. Now, to make this a little bit more interesting, as it zooms up, we're also going to make it spin. Why not? We've got the ability to do that. So we go over here and we set the rotation so that when it's up to this size, when it's up to that point in the video, it has spun around one time and has come up to size. But more on how to use Premiere maybe later. Let's go to colors, another of the Swiss Army knife portions of Adobe Capture. Here we've got an image and we've asked it to go in and start selecting colors, and it will do this automatically. You can see the 5 points that it has selected out of the picture of the flamingo, and then up at the top you'll see the colors. But you can move these around and you watch the colors change at the top and come up with exactly the color palette that you're looking for from an image off your camera roll, or you can actually take a picture with your camera. And this is what it looks like. You can come in here and you can actually change them, but right now all we want to do, just as a demo, is we're going to go in and we're going to call this flamingo. I think that might work. Flamingos, and we're going to hit save. But just selecting a group of colors is only part of it. You can also do gradients. So here you can see by moving those dots around, we can come up with what we're calling a flamingo gradient. It is based on the colors that were in the image, but creates a gradient file. So we'll again give this a name as it's going over to the Capture Demo CC library. We'll call this one Flamingo Gradient. All right, so we hit save and we've got the gradient. Now it also shows you that you can go in and move the colors around, make them more to your liking if you like, as they say. Make them lighter, make them darker. You've got all sorts of controls over these colors that are saved in the library. You also can simply drag each one of these down to create, as you can see, the color bar at the top. You can see that you can just select different portions of the image and come up with another gradient, another color swatch collection. That's what I'm trying to say. Move over to Photoshop, and we're going to type in here web spinners, and we're going to see if we can use that gradient over here on type in Photoshop. So here's web spinners, and if we go up here and we convert this into over here and into a shape, we now have a shape that is the type of web spinners. And if we simply double click on that gradient, and we'll go over here and get rid of those extra dots, and you see we've put the gradient into the web spinners type. So you've got all sorts of ways that you can use the gradients. You can use them as backgrounds, you can use them as type fills, and so on. And of course, it's all still movable, resizable, and so on. So let's see. Why don't we do something else with this? Let's say we've got web spinners here. Let's see if we want to save web spinners as an object in the library with the gradient. So now in the future, if you want to use this as a title of some sort, you just have it in the library, drag it out, and it's already colorized. Now we'll drag out our Brownie Junior camera that we did earlier. Let's make some sort of a page here. We'll put it in the background. We'll resize it about there. Let's see how that looks. A little smaller. Move it over, maybe a little bigger, and you've got then. Well, I don't like the size of that. Let's go up, right about there. So anyway, let's say you were doing a poster of some sort. You can bring in the pieces from your CC library that you've captured with your Adobe Capture on your camera, Android or iPhone. Remember, it gives you endless creative opportunities. Next, we're going to look at looks. What looks is unless you take this image, for example, and select that look or lookup table, or LUT, L-U-T, and so this is a sunset with a lot of color in it. So we're going to call this sunset heavy, and then we're going to hit save, and it's going to put this lookup table over in your library. Then we're going to select this other image, sunset not so heavy. We'll call this one, we'll say okay, and we'll save, and we'll call this sunset light. So we've got two looks, or LUTs, or lookup tables that are now in our CC library. All right, there we go, it's saved. So here we're back in Photoshop, and here's a sunset image from down at the coast. It's okay, but let's say we wanted it to really make it really garish and heavy. Simply take that lookup table, double click on sunset heavy, and there you go. You've got a very heavy sunset. Before, after, and then you can use sunset light. It adds just a little, but there's the heavy, there's the light, and gives you an idea that you can change any of your images to match any other image. And not only in Photoshop, but you can do it on motion graphics in Premiere as well. Let's move over to patterns. Patterns is basically like a kaleidoscope. It's fun. So you take your camera, you open up to patterns, and you can look around your room. I happen to be looking at a TV remote, and this is the kind of pattern that came out. You freeze it, and then you can come over here and you can hit save. You can also twist it around, turn it before you save it. You can see what it does up at the top. As you move it around, it moves around the changes, the pattern that it's making. So we'll save whatever pattern here. We'll call this remote. You know, we're not trying to get too fancy here. This is a pattern of a remote. Can I type remote? There we go. M-O-T-E. And we hit save. Going to capture demo. Let's call it remote 1. We're going to capture demo and we hit save. Looking around, you come back and you can see just moving around. There's all sorts of patterns you can make just by moving your phone around. So there's another very colorful remote. Makes a different kind of pattern. So we'll freeze that and we'll go over here. We'll click and we will save it. And we will save it as, let's twist it a bit. See it turn at the top, becoming more and more like a kaleidoscope as you move around. We'll have, we'll say here, and let's call this one remote as well. Remote. And we'll call it remote 3. Why not? Capture demo, save. Now, we're over in Photoshop again, and all we need to do is take one of these. Look, we took the remote 1 over here, and it comes in so large you actually just see the remote. But down here at the bottom you can change the scale. So we take it down to let's say 8%. Something like that. So now you've got a pattern, and you can also, while you're in here, you can rotate it, move it around, do all sorts of things with it. We're going to keep it pretty much on a straight line. Now we can go in here and we can go to blur, and we can say let's use Gaussian blur, and let's bring this over here so we can see what we're doing. Gaussian blur, blur it up a little more, something like, something that's way too much, just becomes one solid color. Let's go back somewhere in here where it's kind of blurred in the background. Okay, we're trying to make a background behind something, so we've got this blurred out. We'll go in here and we will. Let's see, what do we type in here? Let's call it web spinners. I wonder why. So here, web spinners. We're going to go in here and we're going to move it around and get it up here, spread it out somewhere in there. And so we've got web spinner type layer. We'll click over here. We'll bring in our bring in this other window. Here we go. We'll bring in a drop shadow, like so. We'll say OK. And we've made a background behind our web spinners type. And you can use this background in all sorts of ways. Let's go to brushes. Brushes is the last of the items. Brushes, you take a picture of something and it then turns into a brush. So I took a picture of this Dia de los Muertos coaster, the skeletons playing instruments. You crop it down to the size you want. You click refine and you can get rid of all the background material. You can then go in here and do change the size. You change the spacing between the images that are the brush strokes. You change the scatter, which means that they're not all in a straight line, and we've got 64% scatter there. You can go down here and change so that the sizes change as you move the brush along. You get little ones and big ones. You can change the angle, you can change the flow. You can do all sorts of things to change your brush. Once you're happy with it, you go up here, like always, hit save, and you come over here and we're into Photoshop. Now here, we select our brush and we go over here and actually take the brush up to a reasonably large size. The brush will come in using the foreground color. So here we're just dragging the brush along. You see the jitter as it's moving up and down and the size change. So let's go over here and let's make it really big. And then as you can just use it sort of like a rubber stamp, and each time you tap it, you get different different images of that coaster as a brush. We made it really large, and we could go in here and pretend we're rubber stamping a background for something. We can change the color of the, well, one more here and one more down here, and then we'll go over and we will change the color of the brush. We're doing this gold. Let's go in here and put some green in here. So we'll click around, and as you see, it's semi-transparent, so you can see some of the pieces coming through. We're just sort of playing with the brush, seeing what we can come up with. And let's change it again, and let's go with magenta. Let's do that. We're sort of getting fiesta colors here, and we'll go here and just clicking around. You see each one's a different size and turned a little differently. That's because we made the brush with those special pieces. Now one more. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we need some yellow in here, so we'll go over here. We'll change the foreground color to yellow, and we'll click around like so, and end up with what could be the background to a fiesta image. So there, and well, one more there. Okay, so now that's pretty much what you've got with brushes, and that's pretty much what you've got with all of the parts of Adobe Capture, the Swiss Army knife of mobile apps. There's a little surprise I wanted to put here at the end. I just found out as I was doing this that you can actually do almost all of this actually within Photoshop. They put Capture directly into Photoshop. So that's another lesson another time. It's pretty much used the same way, except it's in Photoshop. So you don't have to use your phone. You can use it through Photoshop. Anyway, that's a teaser for another lesson sometime. Right now, that's all. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you down the road.